Hi, we're Mr. Moonshine. We're back for another adventure in talking about writing. I'm Jason. Got Stuart here with me,
Hello.
and so today, yeah, we're talking. We've been working on. Well, I say we. Stuart has been working on a short story.
Oh,
Uh,
don't sell yourself short, Jason.
well, I mean, so Stuart's been doing the actual writing piece of,
But Jason's been doing the actual conception of it.
and that's how this is really. Yeah, it's been pretty good. I'm good at the big picture stuff, and he's good at breaking it into the smaller pieces. So it's been working out pretty well. He does have more finished on it. Unfortunately, I have not had a chance to read it yet, so we can't specifically talk to that. But that's okay. We've still got other things we can talk about. And one of the things that we just briefly discussed here was story form. So, Stuart, I'm going to let you take the lead here on story form. What is story form?
Well, story form, how it was taught to me in college days at the academy. Well, it's basically like all the different ways like theme and characters can interact to come together to make a satisfying story. And there are thousands and thousands of different ways these can all mesh up, but they all generally hold to the same formula, like trying to remember all this stuff, like for instance, if your main character is more of a doer type person, that means that the impact character is going to be more of a passive beer type generally, and that influences other things in the story, like what the antagonist is doing, how theme can relate to that. And well, if we went really into the depths of all the crazy ways story forms can work, this would be like a 500 episode series, and I don't think either of us.
I mean that's a pretty solid introduction to what we're talking about here. So,
Yeah,
like,
story forms. That ended up being I think 5 or 6 months of classes devoted to that. And what I learned at the end of all of it was that it pretty much didn't matter. Because you just, if you get a story that works, chances are it will fit into one of these story forms, because like I said, there are thousands of different ways a story can be considered a classic form of storytelling. The beginning, middle, end, be satisfying on all regards. So frankly, our professor says, now that you know all this, stop caring about it. But it's something to have in the back of your head if you know it, and if you don't know it, don't worry about it.
sure. So that kind of ties into something we talked about in our very first episode here of Mr. Moonshine, which was the difference in the way that, like, Stuart and I specifically conceptualize and go about writing. Stuart is more the kind to outline everything, have it all set in stone, like build it from the very oh god, I just cannot think tonight. Start with the very most broad look at things, and then break it into the smaller pieces to where you're finally like actually writing the prose. Whereas like with me, I'm more like, hey, what would be a neat idea is if these two guys were to start dicking around together, and then I just start writing and see where it takes me. So story form has a lot to do with that. So it all ties in. It makes sense.
It does. Yeah, because like you kind of write from the inside out, I write outside in.
Yeah, that's a much better way to put it.
Yeah.
So along with talking about that today, we're going to talk about like how that fits into writing for different. I don't know if media is the right word necessarily, but writing for different. I don't know. How would you put that, Stuart? Like different, like short story versus.
There's a word, I don't know the word. It's escaping me.
I think there is a word there, and I just,
It's after 9 o'clock. I don't know anything.
Not like we're wordsmiths or anything. That we can just figure
not,
out words willy-nilly off the top of our heads.
No, it's not like we try to make a living off of being able to communicate.
Exactly.
No.
So the difference in how you get figure out your story forms for say a short story, something like 10 to 15,000 words.
Format.
What?
Format.
See, and we were just so the different formats. So like a short story, which would be something upwards of 10 to 15,000 words. This isn't official. This is just me off the top of my head. Novella, which would be say 15 to maybe 75,000. Maybe that's a little much. And then a full-on novel, which generally you want to be 120,000 words, give or take. Right? I'm kind of on.
Yeah, and if anyone says that there's hard set values for how many words any of those have, they're wrong. There isn't, but.
See, and that's the thing for me when I write. I don't.
Vary publisher to publisher, so.
Yeah. See, and I don't really pay attention to word count.
Nor should you.
It's not important. To me, the story is more important. If it comes down to the end of my story and I'm at 50,000 words and I would like to try to bump it up to 75, then maybe I'll go back in and through my editing, see if I can, embellish a little bit in places and what have you. But really, write the story. As far as I'm concerned, write the story that you want to write and let it be how long it needs to be.
Right.
So anyways, another big difference in conceptualizing stories and the form and format and all that would be writing prose, which is what we've been talking about so far, versus writing scripting, which I've written a few screenplays, writing stage plays. I would even say probably writing article format is a completely separate piece to that. So anyways, those are kind of that's what we're looking at, trying to just talk a little bit about tonight. Probably won't be a lot to say, but we'll see. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, Jason, I think I might disagree with you on a point.
Okay.
About starting out, kind of knowing where you want to hit your word count, because for me that influences a lot, how much I'm going to put into one scene versus another, things like that. Drawing on things we've done, when your friend Jessica had us write those short stories, but keep them under 8,000 words. That was crazy hard, and really had to reevaluate the way we write.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun to do, though.
See, and that's, obviously in a situation like that, there is a very specific word limit for that. So that does influence the way that we approach those stories. And even with Halls, where we've talked about it, we're not looking for it to be even novella length necessarily, just kind of a short story. So yeah, that does influence the way that you come at it. And so you're right on that. I guess the piece for me that I look at is that I've written stories that I think, oh, this is going to be a novel, and then I get to 30, 35, 40,000 words, and the story is done, and that's all there is to it. For me, I trying to go back in and add more to it to try and beef up the word count, just doesn't really work for me. So maybe this is a difference in our writing styles. Again, for me, I feel like the story dictates my writing, whereas your writing dictates the story more. Would that be a fair way to put it?
Sure. Yes, no, maybe so.
I had a thought, and it just completely went. Like I said, it's late at night. We're both kind of out of it here, so whatever. It's just for fun. So let's talk about, Stuart, as you were approaching writing Halls.
Oh, okay.
can you speak to that a little bit? Like,
Yeah, well, keeping in mind that it's meant to be, not so very long. Like, were I to be writing another like 100,000 word story here, I'd be approaching it a lot differently. Like, I'd be putting in a lot more scenes, backstory, more exposition, things like that. So with Halls of Begamnon here, I'm instead taking the path of just throwing it right front and center, let keep it open to interpretation mostly, because so far as in this first go through, the setting hasn't been entirely too important. Like as we said last time, we're kind of keeping it more character driven than anything else. So all that exposition, we can keep that down to like a couple of lines, or someone saying, "Thank God we have the whatever device," or and also because it's just a small one-off thing. There's not a whole lot of investment you need to put into it. Like, I'm not really worrying about things making sense.
sure.
That's a weird way to put it. Like sure, there's a bunch of ogres. I'm not gonna worry about, well, how does the army keep these ogres fed? How do
You're right.
it doesn't matter in the context of a shorter story here.
Yeah. No, exactly, and that's so again talking about form. Like, it's all about how you approach it. God, I'm so sorry. Like, I had something I was gonna say, it's just completely gone.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about like something with Halls where again it's just very short. It's more character driven. It's not so much about the settings and everything. Like, what kind of how does your mindset differ from like when you're working on your novels, the specific like the Alcivan novels?
Oh, I really haven't kind of thought about that a whole lot. Oh man. Well, for a lot, it's a lot less stressful. For writing like giant 300,000 word, or what? Wow, 300K word stories. Volume 2 in a planned set of 6 to 10, whatever. You got to do a lot of worrying about. You got to worry about a lot of words that you haven't even written yet.
Right.
Whereas for like Halls, where we are now, it's probably halfway to a third of the way done. So I'm not really worried that, like, about things like continuity or where any detail I put in, well, did something contradict that 6 books back? I don't have to worry about that, which is a lot less stressful. But on the other hand, like, do I have enough time to give this moment the proper dramatic weight? Has this been properly been explained? You gotta pack a lot more stuff into a smaller package.
Well, I think even with Halls being more of a character-driven piece, part of what you were talking about is you really have to be careful with what you choose to spend your time on. Like, how do you naturally introduce the characters without it being like, oh, and then here's this guy, and here's this guy, and then also there's this guy. Like, figuring out how to make it a natural reveal, but in a much shorter amount of time than you would in, like, again, like a 300,000 word novel. Like, that's a huge part of approaching it, I would think.
It definitely was, and I think we kind of lucked out with just kind of coming up with a story premise where they'd be all together from the get-go. Because otherwise it would, because when characters are just keep getting introduced, especially in a short work, it can start becoming really feeling artificial, like kind of like it's a Chekhov's gun sort of thing, where they showed up, they must be important because they wouldn't devote their time to something that's not important.
You know what? So that actually reminds me. So Saturday nights I play D&D, and right now I'm DMing from the 5th edition starter kit book.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, like, my players actually had a 20-minute conversation with each other that I just kind of let go because it was really entertaining about whether or not they should follow this NPC. And the big piece was that half of the group was like, well, no, our main quest is this way. And the other half of the group was, yeah, but this is a named NPC, so probably important. And like
Game thinking, no.
like a 20-minute conversation about it, and I should have stopped them, but also, like I say, it was so entertaining to watch the back and forth, and like I really was kind of caught up in that, so I let them. I did cut them off eventually, and like, okay, so we do need to like do this in character. But anyways, that just reminded me that it was really, really kind of fun. Because like you're talking about,
and it applies. It applies.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Like, if you introduce a character at some point that is a named character, like, ideally that's going to be somebody that is not necessarily important, but somebody that the reader is going to think, oh, I need to care about this person. I need to pay attention to them for whatever reason. So using Halls as an example, you had a piece in the bit that I did read where there's the big mech suits come down and one of the ogres climbs up into it. Don't give that ogre a name, like you didn't, but that's an example of a character that doesn't need a name. I mean, first off, like, would the main characters even know the name of that ogre? If they would it matter at that point? Like, unless it was something like, oh, and there goes, whatever, the ogre who one time threw me a piece of fish, and that he was a pretty cool dude. Sorry to see him go. Like, if it's something like that, but if you're just like, oh, and then the mech came down and whoever the ogre popped into it, that's confusing for the reader.
Right. And, if you're going to take a more purist interpretation of the whole concept of Chekhov's gun, like, I shouldn't have even put that big iron giant in there because it's really just there a setting, but if you present something, use it, is how that whole concept works. So, and it's not really going to be important to the narrative, it's just there a setting.
But again, that's a place where, so talking about form, flavor text is huge. Like, especially in a short story, when you've got a 300,000 word novel that is part whatever of 6 books or 7 books, whatever, like, you can devote time to those kind of things. When you've got this short story, you have your ogre climb into the mech suit, and that is to give you that idea. And not only have the ogre climb into the mech suit, but the way that the goblins describe it as being, the giant metal creature that this ogre has to sacrifice himself to power it, like, that's, again, a part of setting, and not just the setting, but also giving an indication of what the characters are like. These goblins that we're going to spend some time with, how do they approach the world? How do they see the world around them? So,
that's a challenge with a shorter form, is you got to make something small seem larger, because you don't want someone to read the story and go, well, that was a couple minutes. Whoop-de-doo.
Right.
You kind of want them to think what we're shooting for is, oh, I read that short thing, but I kind of wanted more. I felt like it could be bigger than that. That's what you're shooting for.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm shooting for. I don't know what other people are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even with something like Halls, you're talking about the continuity and figuring out the way that the whole universe works is not important for this short story, but to give the reader the idea that there is a whole universe around them.
Yeah, let them fill in the blanks in their own heads.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas again, with a full-on novel, or whatever, you've got more room to actually explain and to describe in detail, you know, all of those things. Now, again, there are still pieces in a novel that you want to leave, you know, for the reader.
It's kind of a subconscious thing. Like, I think with a shorter form, like a reader kind of generally, when they know that it's going to be a short story, they kind of subconsciously want to fill in the blanks themselves and like imagine something bigger. Whereas like if you're just cracking open a giant thick book like a Brandon Sanderson novel, you kind of expect subconsciously them to fill all the blanks for you. Sometimes you want more reader imagination in there, sometimes you want it spelled out by the author.
Absolutely. So then that's a piece of, like, as a writer, how you approach what you're writing. Because, like, so for me, I don't necessarily put myself in the shoes of my reader to be like, well, how is my reader going to approach this? How are they going to enter this world that I am creating? I just create the world and then hope that when people read it, they'll be able to, you know, and in doing editing and things, you know, be able to, at that point, look at more, okay, how is somebody brand new to this going to come in? Are they going to be able to understand what's happening, you know, who the characters are, like why they interact with each other this way?
I think I don't try to put myself into a reader viewpoint really until like the second read through.
Yeah.
Then I'll kind of get an idea of, well, hold on, this doesn't work at all. That's stupid.
See, and that's a place where, like, I actually have a really hard time. I usually edit while I write. Like my first and second draft are basically done concurrently because I am consistently going back through and editing, and that's something I'm doing different with the book that I'm currently working on. I'm not letting myself go back and edit, and oh my god, it is so difficult. I'm having such a hard time with it.
I'm with you on that one. I kind of do the same thing, and I've been kind of wondering if that's a bad habit, and I'm trying to break myself of it. Especially, like, I haven't even read through the new stuff that I gave you. I just wrote it. It's a completely raw draft, so it's probably filled with spelling errors and grammatical nonsense. I bet it's awful. I don't know, because I haven't read it yet. I just wrote the damn thing.
Right. Yeah, see, and that's something, like, I don't know if it's a bad habit to be editing while you are writing. I know it's given me trouble
so many differing opinions on it that...
Yeah.
Maybe it isn't.
See, and that's a place where, for me, when I started writing, like, as an adult, I actually started with a screenplay. Like, the first thing that I wrote and completed as an adult was a screenplay, which, as you're writing, you kind of have to be editing at the same time with that, because there's not as much room for, you know, expanding on things. You really have to get, like, it's really A to B to C, you know, kind of thing. You hit your main story points right away. You don't fill in with flowery stuff in between. And so that's where I kind of got...
The screenwriter, then.
Sorry, say it again?
You think I'd be the screenwriter, then?
But, see, no, because you
feel
feel like...
I can't do it. I cannot do it. I've tried.
Well, I feel like between the two of us, like, you do a much better job with the and flowery writing isn't the way to put it, but you know, setting the scene, like, this is where we are, this is what it looks like, you know, like, the reader feels like they are standing there and can do a 360 spin and know exactly what they're looking at. Whereas with me, I feel like especially when I'm writing prose, it's more like, oh, and by the way, they happen to be in this place while this is all happening.
Yeah, I remember, like, those early drafts of Oakwood, I on the notes, I keep sending you out, but where are they?
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that with... I don't let I'm not letting, good Lord, I am not letting myself edit while I write. However, I am keeping those things in mind, where every time I start a new scene, even if it's in the same place that the characters have been, I mention again, like, oh, and they're in the bar, and this time they're sitting at a table instead of actually at the bar, and that gives them this different kind of view of everything that's happening, you know, to really try and build that that place of where they are, like, so that you can see. But again, it's having started with screenplay where you just say they're at the house, because if it gets made into a movie, then that's something that the set designer will figure out later.
Yeah.
Not something that I need to worry about while I'm writing it. So, yeah, completely different approach. I will say, I think, as of right now, I like prose writing more, because I feel like it gives me more of a chance to practice my writing. Because I do have to fill in all those details for myself. You know, when I'm writing, I see it all very clearly in my head. Exactly, you know, where they're at, what the people are wearing, you know, what kind of smells are there. But I forget to put that stuff in. So it's, you know, like I say, with prose, it's giving me more of a chance to work on.
It's all about putting the picture in your head in someone else's head.
Exactly. Feel like I was going somewhere with that, and I just lost it. So,
I thought you reached it. I
Okay.
thought you came full circle there by the end.
Good deal. I'm glad somebody's paying attention, because I sure as hell am not, like, at all.
That's okay. I drift in and out.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about. What time are we clocking in at here?
Let's take a look. We've just a little less than half an hour right now.
Oh, geez. We kind of poured right through that. Probably means we missed some stuff. Oh, well. or whatever. I kind of wanted to talk about setting and, like, how to... Well, pretty much how I, set the scene when, start writing a scene.
Right.
I think, personally, the most important part to get how the image in my head of a scene across is like by how the character views it emotionally. Like, for instance, when we talked about earlier, like when we introduced Tim, like my first thought on how to introduce him was I kind of thought about Saving Private Ryan and how they introduced Tom Hanks in that one.
Oh.
Where he's just in that amphibious craft, or I forget the real word, when it just kind of shows him with a bunch of other soldiers about to hit the beach. That's kind of what I was going for, so I kind of tried to put something similar to that, only with goblins.
That's an interesting point too. I've actually just been talking about with some friends of mine, starting a story en media res, which is like in the middle of the action kind of
things. Yeah.
That it almost feels like a trope to start a story that way. But man, I gotta tell you, like, especially
does it?
Yeah, right. Like, especially with a story where there is like some action piece to it, even if this is the only action piece, like that is such a good way, I feel like, to really introduce your readers, or in the case of Saving Private Ryan, your viewers, to what is happening, because you're experiencing it at the same time as the characters. And so again, that's a place where the world building with Tem, he sees the ogre climb the giant metal beast and sacrifice himself, and we're experiencing that with him. Like, we're experiencing the new world with him. I feel like that's a really good way to bring the reader into the story.
Yeah, I'd be hesitant to even call it a trope. I'd more call it, just one of the better ways to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like Stephen King's on writing, he says, start the story as far down the line as you can.
As close
in
to
the middle of things, do it.
Yeah, absolutely. See, and that's the thing where, like, so when I wrote the opening to Oakwood, it starts out with the card game, but before that, like, I felt like I needed to introduce who this character is that we're going to be spending all this time with. So, like, you have just enough background to kind of indicate why he would put himself into this situation, but not so much that I can't expand on it later, kind of thing.
Right.
Which, as I've been really not letting self-edit, that's one of the pieces that I've really struggled with because I want to go back and rewrite it. Because I
pretty much like your opening because it is that in the middle of the action opening. It's a kind of a James Bond thing almost.
Yeah, like honestly, like a lot of that scene was inspired by Casino Royale, actually. Like it's starting out with the card game, but like specifically what I mean though is like the background on my opening line that I actually really love is Vance McCullough always considered himself a dapper man. I love that opening line. That is a great opening line.
I think so too. I mean, it sets character right there.
Yeah, and so that's a piece where I then go on to say, he left home at an early age, and his father was abusive, and blah, 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 and whatever else, and he taught himself card tricks. Like, I don't know if those are things that need to be introduced right then. I think it might be better if it's like, Vance McCullough always considered himself a dapper man, and he used that to his advantage to, con people into the card games or whatever. To go a little more like with that and maybe a res kind of thing. Anyways, we're like that's. I think you're right. I think calling it a trope is a little too. I don't know what word I want there. It's not a trope. It is a tool.
Tool. Yeah. Yes, tropes are tools.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think the word trope is meant to be a negative, but it's not. I don't think.
That's true. It has taken on more of a negative connotation lately, specifically with movies, where the movies fall into the common tropes kind of thing, the token black man kind of stuff.
Okay, tropes are negative.
But not necessarily, because every story is going to follow certain tropes. There is no way to avoid them. Really, if we're going to talk every story, there are only 3 different kinds of stories or whatever it is. That famous quote by whoever it was. I'm not here. Every story is going to follow certain tropes. The important piece is to make sure you're not falling into bad tropes like the token black man and all that kind of thing. To make those tropes work for your story.
Tripping when the monster comes.
Say it again.
Tripping comes up, woman falls to her knees and screams.
Right. Like every horror movie ever made.
Except Alien.
Good
Alien
call.
rocks.
It's very true. Man, Alien is such a good movie. Such a good indicator of, so many different things.
I'm sorry to put us on a tangent.
No, actually, this ties in because...
Okay.
The story behind the writing of Alien is, so Dan O'Bannon and the other guy whose name I can't remember set out to write this story that actually originally was a comedy, if I'm not mistaken. It was the space truckers. I mean, yeah, it was a comedy because it was space truckers.
I had not heard this.
And so the alien piece of it wasn't there in the first draft, but then there was another movie that came out that was I can't remember what it was, but it was set on a submarine maybe, and it was the one Russian on an American submarine kind of thing. That's not exactly what it was, but it's that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that gave them the idea of so what if we have this alien, it's that they're trapped on the ship with this alien, and then that lent itself to become a horror movie. So as they were scripting it, though, they did not use pronouns, or gender-specific pronouns, I should say. They gave the characters names, just last names. They didn't give anybody first names in the first draft. And
Ripley, not Ellen.
Right, exactly.
Gotcha.
And left it completely gender neutral. And really, Dan O'Bannon has said, the reason that they did that was because they didn't want to pigeonhole. Then they could cast anybody in the movie. They could cast whoever they wanted in whichever role, and that is so huge. I don't know how that movie was made in 1979, and we have not continued to do that kind of thing today. Like, it really doesn't make sense to me.
That's actually pretty awesome.
Yeah, like extremely progressive.
I think I remember reading something like some along the lines that Ripley was like originally written for a man, but that's cooler. I like that.
Yeah, no, it was like, and now that I think about it, they may have used he as a pronoun, but like in the note before the script, they say like, we've done this all in he, but it can be, it's gender neutral. Like any of them can be either gender. Because again, they were looking at like it's set in the future. They're space truckers. Like it's not just gonna be dudes out there. But then
that kind of reminds me of when we were making a character for, I forget, something of yours, where we were like coming up with all these character traits, and then at the end, wait, hold on, is this a man or a woman? And you flipped a coin.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh man, that was so long ago.
Who was that?
I'd forgotten about that. It was for, oh, gosh, what was that for? It was a script. It might have been for My Story So Far, because that was what I was working on when you came.
I think so.
But yeah, that's, unless it's specific to your story, like I don't think that it's necessary to specify a gender. Like, well, specify a gender, obviously.
At some point, please do.
At some point, but don't just stick to the cisgendered white male thing. And that's actually something with I'm actually going to spoil a huge piece of Oakwood that I recently decided on.
Ooh.
So I had originally set it up that
I don't know whether to cover my ears or not.
Well, it's not. I mean, it is a huge spoiler for one of the main characters, but well, kind of two of the main characters. But basically, I had decided that Haywood Aronson and Lilo the Main were going to kind of drift towards each other, kind of get together towards the end, and then Aronson was going to die, and that was like, that was going to be like a turning point for her character, for Lila's character, and kind of lead the story on a little bit. And I think he's still going to die, but I've decided Lila is kind of drifting towards him, and he's not rebuffing her advances at all, rebuking her advances at all. But like before the last battle starts, he's going to be like, hey, so I know that you've been interested in me, and I really appreciate it. It's really great. But you're really not my type. So I think Haywood Aronson is going to be gay.
Why not?
Like, and that's really, like, I was thinking about, why am I putting these characters together? Well, because they need something to do. Well, then do I even need those characters? And I do need them for other things in the story. Because I
remember having that conversation with you, yeah.
Yeah, and at one point we had talked about, like, what about combining the characters? Instead of having the two of them, make it just one
person, yeah.
And I'd kind of, like, thought over the different pieces of that. And then I started thinking, like, well, hell, like, so far, like, everybody's white. Well, the way that I've set up the background of the universe, that kind of works. I'm still not super comfortable with it. Probably.
Well, it's the Old West, right after the Civil War in Texas, or wherever you are. So there's going to be some form of segregation here.
Yeah. But so then I was like, well, what kind of things can I do to not just have it be, the standard thing, and also I didn't want it to be like, Leela falling over herself over Aronson, like, becoming that damsel. Like, I've set her up to be a very strong character, and I want her to maintain that strength.
Because she's a strong character doesn't mean she doesn't want some romance. Come on.
Right. Yeah, she still has feelings. She's still a person. And that's where I kind of started, like, getting this idea. And at first I thought, well, maybe Leela's gay. Maybe that would be the way to go. But then like it really, I kept coming back to like, nope, it's got to be Aronson. Like I spent a lot of time thinking about it,
Yeah,
and
that's the right call too.
I think it makes more sense for it to be him. Because then what I can do with Leela at that point is she says, "Oh, you're gay. That's
You're
cool."
Sly? I did
Like,
not expect.
yeah, like, oh shit, okay, well, cool, good for you. I guess I will not continue chasing you. Like,
All right, handshake then. All right, good,
yeah,
good powwow.
it's not going to be emotionally devastating for her. Like, she's not. They've only known each other for a few days. She's not totally in love with him.
Like she can totally have like a rats moment. But
Yeah, like she has a crush on him, and so it's I really appreciate it, but I'm not interested. You're not my type. She's like, oh,
oh,
okay,
oh.
just that. Over the span of a few seconds, just that realization of what all the implications of that are, and then, okay, well, cool, that's awesome. You're still like, and that's literally the only piece I'm gonna like have in there about it, like, because Aronson being gay is not important to his character. I mean, it is, but it's not.
It's not the part of it. His sexuality doesn't define his character.
Doesn't define who he is, exactly.
Yeah, like,
and
you don't want to just have, hey, he's the gay guy, and that's what everybody thinks about him.
See, and so like the way I'm trying to set it up right now is that, like, Leela is going to start kind of hitting on him a little bit, being very, very sly about it, and he's not going to like be a dick about it. Like, he's just not put himself into situations where he's alone with her. Like, she's like, "Oh, Aronson, you're looking very handsome today," and he'd be like, "Oh, thank you. You're looking very handsome yourself," and then go off to do something else. He's
just being friendly, but
yeah,
it comes across as flirty almost.
But not so flirty that the reader, like, I kind of want the reader to be like, well, what's going on with this? Like, why is he not interested? Is there something about her that specifically that he doesn't like? Does he not like the fact that she is a woman trying to make her way in a man's world? Like, oh my God, is he sexist? And then have that reveal of, like, I want the reader to go, oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Might say something, were I a straight man, I would take you in a manly fashion, but
were I interested in what you got down there? Anyways, we have just gotten so far off track, but it's been a lot of fun.
It has been fun. What were we even talking about? Oh well.
I don't even remember. I think we hit all the points that we had wanted to talk about, though.
Well, probably not. We were still on setting, but we can save it.
Yeah, that's all. Cool. So we're gonna cut it for tonight. Over the course
for tonight's episode, yes.
Yeah, that'll be all for us for tonight. Over the course of the next week, we'll have Stuart continue to work on his stuff. If like, I would very much encourage, like, I want people to give us comments on stuff. Is there things about what we've said that you agree with? Is there stuff that you disagree with? Like,
admittedly, we were very off point, I think.
Are there points that we missed? Like, maybe the things that we're not thinking about because it's, after 10 o'clock at night, are things that actually, are stuff that we should talk about in another episode or whatever. So if you're interested, please just shoot us a comment. Even if it's just like, you guys suck. Like, whatever, that's cool.
You're lost, guys.
Yeah, pretty much.
Who's this? Hey.
As soon as I get a chance to read through it, I will post what the new bits of Hall's onto the website that Stuart has written. And I think, yeah,
Keep in mind, I have not edited it. It's going to be bad, but it's a raw draft.
That's the whole point. That's what we're all about for this.
That's what you're coming here to see.
I mean, hopefully. I don't think it's my good looks, so. All right. Well, for Stuart, I am Jason. Thank you. We're Mr. Moonshine. Have a good night.